Welcome to the Raider Life podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Boots. This interview has been trimmed from its original format to meet YouTube and Facebook's video standards. For entire episodes and bonus interviews, head on over to RaiderLife.com or subscribe on the Apple Podcast app. Now, let's get into this week's episode. With Jim Otto. You are tuned in to the Raider Life podcast and listening at RaiderLife.com. Here's Pops.
Jim, how are you?
Doing great, Charlie. Good to hear from you.
Thank you for joining us. And big shout out to Gooz for bringing you to us. So what are you up to today?
Well, we're just doing some different things. Generally I have the habit of having surgeries and stuff like that. But today we're talking about Sally. I don't know, ladies, maybe some ladies out there are hearing me.
There's plenty of them.
I know you wear shoes that are really harmful to your feet. Some of the high heels and stuff like that, they squish your toes, they do all this stuff, and it isn't long through various different reasons. You get a little older and your feet are gone to pieces. Sally was a model in Miami at different times, and she had to, walk the planks and do all that type of stuff with high heel shoes on. So being on display as she was, that would, eventually take a toll on her feet. I don't know of any other way that her feet had that problem, but we're just talking about her upcoming surgery to straighten those poor little toes out so she feels better. So,
Sally, Raider Nation hopes all the little piggies are feeling better. Maybe we could put out a Sally Otto's foot sauna or some type of foot spa for Christmas time.
That would be wonderful.
Folks, we got the unbreakable man here. Jim, you're the original Raider, Mr. Raider, and that's where I want to start it all off. Grew up Lisco, went to Miami, and now here you are playing for the Raiders. What did it feel like? First day AFL camp.
Oh, it was a dream come true, really, and it was hard to, really appreciate the feeling that I might have. I was young. I was only 22 years old, and flying into San Francisco from Wisconsin, my home, and getting there and not knowing who was going to meet me to take me to Santa Cruz, California, where our training camp was at that time. I stood there. I had a suitcase that was made out of pressed cardboard, and I had a pair of football shoes, and I had my helmet. My helmet was very important because I have a very large head, and I had a one-of-a-kind type helmet, and it wouldn't fit in a suitcase. I had to carry it outside of the suitcase with my shoes. So I'm walking through.
That's a noggin, folks.
I'm walking through San Francisco Airport with a yellowish orange helmet for the University of Miami helmet I brought along with me and my shoes. I'm looking for somebody to find me. Who's this Jim Otto, whatever? And finally someone said something to the likes of that, and I was off to Santa Cruz, California for my very first training camp and the very first day of the Oakland Raiders. So it was exciting. There was nobody in the world that could beat me. I just felt that I had the world in my hands, and that was the beginning of the time for me with professional football.
Now, before the merger, was there a brewing rivalry within the men towards the NFL?
Well, there was a feeling of disbelief. I think there were a lot of people, they were doubting Thomases, let's call them, that didn't think that this merger type thing was ever going to happen, and we were, way too optimistic about trying to be on an equal basis with the National Football League. But there were some of us, one being naturally Mr. Al Davis, who was then, the commissioner of the American Football League at that particular time. And there were guys like me with various different teams in the American Football League that had the confidence that we could compare with the National Football League. And yes, indeed, I was very optimistic about it. I thought, well, this is our opportunity to go forward and prove what the NFL didn't believe in us before. We're going to make them believe in us now.
So in 1963, when Al Davis comes in, Does the culture just immediately shift?
The culture didn't shift because there was a lot of disbelief. There were a lot of people yet that said, "Who? Oakland Raiders? Is that a football team? The Oakland Raiders?" You know, and there was all kinds of different sayings that people would have.
Right.
And if you went to a place where, you know, they needed your name and some type of a reference, and you would say, "Well, my name is Jim Otto, and I play for the Oakland Raiders," and they say, "Who's that? Who's the Oakland Raiders?" And so we would have to then naturally explain who and what we were and what was going on, and they would look at us, you know, very doubtful and think that I don't think so, but we'll take his word at it and go from there. There was a lot of doubt. I mean, and there was doubt where I grew. See, I grew up in Wisconsin, and I played at the University of Miami, Florida, and I wanted to be a pro football player in the worst way. You know, and this was an opportunity for me, and I was going to do the best I could. You know, there were so many people that were doubting Thomases, let's call them, in Wisconsin because of the great Packer teams.
Right.
You know, and I would always, you know, I always wanted to be a Packer as a kid, and everything I did, I emulated the Packers and all that. But anyway, I didn't get a chance. I didn't get drafted by the National Football League, and I did get drafted by this new upstart league called the American Football League and the Minnesota team. I was drafted, first of all, by the Minnesota team, and then about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks later, the
NFL came a-calling.
Yeah, the NFL came a-calling, and the people in Minneapolis didn't want an American Football League franchise, so the Raiders...
these chips are just building up on your shoulder.
Yeah, so I got picked up by the Houston Oilers, and I signed a contract with them because they split up the Minneapolis franchise, and all the players, Abner Haynes went with me, and all, you know, guys like that. We had some pretty good draft picks, actually, but that's what happened, and it wasn't long. I got a newspaper one morning that says Jim Otto is with the Houston Oilers, and not the Minneapolis.
News to me.
Yeah. So, and then all of a sudden, did you hear, did you see something, Jim, that you're with an American Football League team called the Oakland SENORS? And I said, who? They said Oakland SENORS, and I says, well, where's Oakland?
And is that in Mexico?
Yeah, I didn't know where Oakland was, and I said, SENORS? I said, that doesn't sound very good. Well, it didn't last long. It lasted maybe a day, and in Oakland, I understand, there were several people who were confused by the whole thing, and they said, SENORS, you can't have a football team by the name of SENORS.
Thank God they changed that thing.
Yeah, it's kind of sissy, isn't it? Somebody agreed, and they said, well, let's call them the Oakland Raiders. All of a sudden, I was sitting at the fraternity table in the student union, and someone said to me, says, Jim, you're an Oakland Raider today. You were a senior yesterday, and we don't know who you were the day before that, but you are a Raider. And
they know exactly who he is now. He's Mr. Rader.
It was a wonderful trek for me. It was a great thing. I'll always remember.
You had some luck with the jerseys. You only wore the best. You had the U jersey, then you had a nice little Houston Oilers, and then the black and silver. I guess first the black and yellow turned into the black and silver.
Yes, I didn't have a Houston jersey. I never got one of those, but I did get an Oakland Raider jersey. It was black, gold, and white, and my number was number 50, and that was the number I was in college as well. And they gave me the number 50, and I was happy. I got my college number. Well, as we got into that very first year of the American Football League and being with the Raiders, my teammates called me Jim, and some called me Ott. Instead of Otto, they called me Ott. You know, it went on that way, and so someone says, why don't you get an O on your jersey, you know, at Ott? It was because Johnny Olszewski was playing for the Redskins, Johnny O, and Johnny O had an ought on his jersey. And he said, why don't you get an ought on his jersey? And someone says, no, that Johnny O guy, you know who that is, the guy that plays for the Redskins, he's got an ought. Why don't you get ought O? So I looked at him and they says, ought O? I said, I don't think the American Football League, I don't think the American Football League would approve that. Well, evidently, at that particular time, the American Football League was looking for some publicity of any sorts, and they thought, well, maybe if someone has a number of 00 ought O, that would be of interest to people. So they gave me 00, and that's when it started. I got the 00, and that was a bit of a challenge for me. That challenge, I would go to like New York, or I'd go to Buffalo, or wherever we went to play, and they'd say, hey, you 00, is that your IQ? You know, the fans would say that from the stands, you know. And in my heart, I would think, I'll show you my IQ, you so-and-so.
Yeah.
I says, I'm going to, when I snap the ball and go down to cover that punt, I says, I'm going to knock someone's head off, and then they'll remember 00. And so that's what I did, and I did that the rest of my career with that 00. And that's kind of how the 00 came all about.
Man, he whooped ass, and he whooped ass often.
That's, you know, there's a book out, something about the Raiders whoop ass. And,
the Badasses book you're talking about.
Or the Badasses book, yeah, there it is.
That was a good book.
I think I got one here on my desk someplace. But anyway,
Peter Richmond, shout out Pete Richmond. How are you? Great book.
Yeah. Anyway, that's kind of the story on the 00 and how Jim Otto evolved out of the draft from 1960 into football for the next 15 years.
So what are you thinking? You're at Raider camp, right? The first time you lay your eyes on the beautiful black and silver jersey. First time they unveil it to you.
Well, that was my uniform. That was my uniform. I had a professional uniform, and the dreams of a boy from northern Wisconsin, a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 16-year-old, the dreams of a boy like that becoming true, that I was with a professional football team, and nobody, not anyone, could take that away from me. It was part of my life. It was part of that I had now. That was my identity. That's what I owned. It was great. It was wonderful. It was just a feeling of satisfaction, and a feeling that it would give me the impetus to go forward and strive to what I became.
And you made a lifetime commitment to excellence. Jim, I want to tell you something. You're going to go down in history with the likes of John Wayne and some of the biggest heroes that America's had. And that spirit that you brought to that field and you bring to your life every day is an inspiration to all of us in Raider Nation. And we thank you for it.
Although that is something that, you know, I always wanted to do. You know, when I put my helmet on, when I put any type of gear on, when I was a little boy, the first persons I went to was my mom and dad, and I stood in front of them, and I wanted them just to give me a little pat on the back. That you really look good, Sonny. You're looking good, Jimmy. You're looking good in that uniform, you know, and stuff like that. Well, this was the uniform I had when I was in high school, and I was nobody. I was only 120 pounds. I was going to be a center and a linebacker, and then nobody thought I would ever make it. But it was great. I felt I was there. So now I had to perform. If I'm here, I got to perform, and that's what I've done, and that's what I've tried to do my whole life with everything that I've ever done. All my various different businesses I've done and everything, I've done my best to perform and made people appreciate it.
Folks listening, Jim's had a tremendous success with his different franchises after football. This is a guy. How many times have you sat back and thought, had I been playing in 2016, the endorsement deals? I mean, you had that in your head from the 00. You had the style. You always had it. Can you imagine that?
Well, you know, I'm not complaining. I'm not jealous. Maybe there has to be some form of jealousy in there, but believe me.
Oh, you would have crushed it.
If you knew me if you really knew me, you know that Jim Otto came into the American Football League. He was paid $7,000 for the first 2 years he played. And then I got a $1,000 raise in the third year. That was what I played for. If I came into the league now and performed, I didn't have any real statistics about myself, about being, a great All-American in college or anything like that. I was very fortunate to be able to play. God gave me the strength and fortitude to go forward and prove to people that I was a football player and that I could play at a very high level of football. If I was a person like that, I would probably come out of college now and I would probably be asking or forcing the ownership of the football team that drafted me for probably upwards of $50 million to sign. That's what these kids are getting now. But that never happened. And, what Sally, my beloved wife, and I have done with our money, whatever money we had, I developed it into a very good living for us. And I'm still at my age. We're going strong, and I've built businesses. I've done a lot of different things, and I'm very proud of it. Before my mom and dad passed away, they were so proud of me for what I did, and that's what was important to me. I wanted to feel appreciated by my mom and dad and my peers. That was so important, and Sally and I still are doing it every day with what we do. We're Christians. We're faithful people, and then what I'm doing is, for the good of all people.
And I think that's why they called you Pops, because you got a pure heart, you got a good heart, and what you and Sally got is something that America can admire, and it's a beautiful thing, beautiful thing.
Well, it is, it gives me the word Pops with people who call me Pops, gives me a form of maybe ownership,
love,
maybe a form of love, maybe a form of, a commitment to excellence.
Warm. It's love. It's that you're a guiding light. You're a father figure to a lot. You're a role model.
Well, that's what I've got, and wherever I go, I mean, I've been around the world. I go someplace, and there will be someone, not 2, not 100, not 1,000, but maybe someone knows me as, hey, you're 00, you're Pops, and that's great. I love it. I get a smile. I get a warm spot in my heart, and it makes me feel good. And, well, how did you get that number? How did you get that name? And, you explain a little bit about yourself, and right away you're part of that group. And to have that, it's like you say, John Wayne, you can't take it away from him. I'm so proud to be able to represent people of the American Football League, people of the National Football League.
People of the United States.
Of the United States and also of my Christian faith and everything that I believe in, they see in me when they call me Pops.
And that's a fact. Jim, I was telling you before we went on, I'm bringing you in with Johnny Cash's Won't Back Down, because that I think is the story of your life that you live to this day. When you met Al Davis, did you guys have that same passion? Did you click right away?
Well, it was a tremendous passion that I saw in Mr. Davis, Coach Davis, I call him. And he had something that I wanted. He had a desire. He had the pride and the poise, and I wanted every bit of that because I had it, but I wasn't really fulfilling it completely, and I just knew that's what I wanted and that's what I was going to do. And he taught us Raiders, us young Raiders back in 1963, 64, and on ever since then, to have that pride and have that poise, have that commitment to excellence that was so very important for us to go on and become the great team that we were, and that's all I wanted to do. I didn't look at dollars and cents in those days very much. I guess I wasn't too smart. But I wanted to be the best, and I wanted the Raiders to be the best, and I played that way so they could be the best.
Years of getting kicked around, years of not being good enough. Now you guys are in the NFL. Now it's time to pony up, and you sure do. What was the most memorable moment you had, a locker room conversation with Al, halftime, gearing up the troops?
There's certain things, that I didn't have to hear him say. I knew when he looked at me what he was thinking. I mean, I knew Mr. Davis very well, very well. I knew that I could equate the score of the game or certain aspects of the game. Say, for instance, at halftime, we'd be in the locker room at halftime, and I could look at him, and I knew he was thinking about certain types of pass protection that we weren't getting out of our offensive line, and we had to get that pass protection before we could win, before we could score. And you got to score touchdowns to win. That is what we were going for. We always knew that you had to score the points to win a game. And that's why we did it so much in the fourth quarter in so many games in those years. We would win the game in the last part of the fourth quarter. We understood what Mr. Davis meant about pride, poise, commitment to excellence. We would look at each other in the huddle, and we just knew that we were encouraging each other as we looked at each other in the huddle to go forward and do the best we could to get that score and win the game. So it was just a fantastic feeling that we would kind of transfer to each other person by looking at each other. We knew exactly what Pops wanted. We knew exactly what Hawk wanted. Wayne Hawkins was one of those guys. And we knew exactly what Harry Shue wanted, and he wanted to win just like the rest of us on that line. And you looked across at Pete Banaszak and Hewart Dixon, the running backs and people like that, and the quarterback, whoever it was, Stabler, LaMonica, whoever. You just knew that we were all winners and we all wanted to win that game.
You shared that passion, that in-huddle band of brotherhood. Who was the best field general?
We had some good ones, really. I mean,
yeah, the best.
I know, and it was in my heart that I wanted all of those guys to be winners. We wanted them to give us their best efforts at all times. You go back to Tom Flores, who became our head coach some years later. Tom Flores was our first Raider quarterback, and Tom was always a very diligent, studious type player that knew his plays, knew everything about it. When we got LaMonica, he was probably one of the best athletic quarterbacks that we had. With regard to his athletic prowess, he was able to do various different things by going back to the pass, ended up running or doing something that was spectacular, throwing that bomb, for 70 yards for a touchdown. And then you got Stabler, who someone gave him the nickname as a snake because he could strike, could strike with that ball and get the touchdown and get the win and everything. And so we had guys like that we worked with, and then Jimmy Plunkett came along just as I was retiring, and he was another one of those great ones that should be in the Hall of Fame with Stabler and with the rest of us guys. Plunkett was just a great one like it, too. So we had those types of guys in leadership and also the directors of our offense on the field. They knew exactly what our coaches wanted. Oftentimes we were thinking ahead of our coaches as we played the game.
Back then, right, was the team more of a tighter unit, more so than it is now?
Well, we were a family. It just, Oakland, the city of Oakland was a blue-collar area. And, blue-collar people are family people. They have children. They have wives. They have loved ones. They, practice their religious faith. They do all that
good,
type
humble
of thing.
People.
Yeah, they're humble people. And that's what Oakland was, and that's what we became as a football team. We became a group of guys like that were able to get out there together and do the job to win the game. That's why we scored in the fourth quarter. That's why we scored to win in the fourth quarter. It was fantastic the way we were able to play the game and win. And it was just such a wonderful feeling. And it's a wonderful feeling today. And God bless those that are not with us anymore. But those that are still with us, we're still a family. And we had that feeling of togetherness with whatever we did. I mean, I miss a lot of my player buddies. Sally used to have a dinner at our house every week where the guys would come down and we'd have, she'd make all kinds of great meals and stuff for.
Oh, so what kind of food Sally putting down at the dinner?
Well, the prime rib bones that they barbecue. You got a big prime rib, and you cut that main meat off of it, and then you have the bones. Well, there was a place in town that would do that, a big restaurant. I would go there and pick up the bones, and there would probably be, oh goodness, maybe 40 bones, something like that. And they would have a lot of meat on. They'd probably have, I don't know,
these are dinosaur bones, folks.
Yeah, these are big bones. And we'd have a big barbecue with the bones, and Sally would make a huge, huge platter of spaghetti for each one of us. With sauce on it and everything. We'd eat those bones and eat that spaghetti. We'd eat the salad. She'd make a huge salad for us. And that's what we would do, and those same guys that would be coming to my house every week, if I needed them for anything, they would be with me. But what I did is I had horses. I had some quarter horses for my children, and it just started out with a regular horse. It wasn't anything special, but after a while I was able to afford better horses, and I needed hay to feed them. Us guys on our day off, on Monday was our day off, I'd get a flatbed truck, and I'd have those guys, we'd all get together, we'd get in that flatbed truck and drive up into the valley here in California where I knew some ranchers, and we'd go up there and haul hay back to the barn where I live. It would probably be about 80, 90 miles, something like that we'd be hauling that hay. We'd have old cowboy hats on and old shirts and stuff.
If you look at it with beer?
Yeah, that was it was. We would drink beer, and Sally would put on a great big feed for us after we got through loading the hay in the barn and putting it all up. She'd have a big dinner for us. So that type of togetherness we had in the Raider organization and the Raider players. There was no discrimination with regards to so-and-so guys made a lot of money and so-and-so guys was any color or whatever. We were family. We were brothers.
I hope that magic doesn't get lost in the NFL.
Well, that is the thing that we worked on constantly. And then if you look at teams winning today, they're consistently up on the top. They have a form of family, certainly. I mean, there's some greatness. There's some greatness there too. These guys are great football players. They make big money, and yet there still is that form of a family amongst them, that pride and that poise that Mr. Davis taught us guys to have, that pride and that poise, that commitment to excellence.
Make a commitment, walk with your chest out, and keep your head up.
Right. You have that pride in that way, and you walk down the street after a defeat, and people would look at you, and you knew that you felt good about your life and where you're going, and you stumbled yesterday, but it's not going to happen again.
But, folks, as straight as Pops walked, his nose could not seem to walk as straight. I read a story about Sally straightening your nose, parking lot, Oakland Coliseum.
Well, a lot of times, I would break my nose, and I've had, I don't know how many times, just too many times, maybe 25, 30 times I broke my nose. Or maybe it was broken all the time, and they just pushed it from one side to the other. I don't know. But
it should look like a toucan at this point.
A lot of times I'd come out of the locker room, I used to wear a suit and tie because, to me, football was a business meeting every Sunday. On Sunday morning, I'd get up, put my suit and tie on, I'd go to pregame meal, and all of us Raiders did that. We would put our suits and ties on. We would
shave before game day?
Not necessarily. We would, because a lot of times I would kind of rip up your face during the game. But,
all right.
We would shave after the game, and we'd come out of the locker room after a victory, and we looked like we were going.
What kind of aftershave? What kind of aftershave you smelling like?
Let's say Canoe.
Okay, all right.
Okay, Canoe's pretty good stuff, you know.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, we would come out of the locker room after a victory like that. It looked like we were going to a business meeting. We'd have our ties on, our shirts. I had mohair suits. You know, that was the big deal in those days. You have a mohair
looking suit
because it had the sheen and it laid so nicely on your body and all that jazz. It had a nice tie to go with it. And, you know, my wife was dressing me for sure. I know that. But she wanted me to look good, too.
I'm Jimmy, that well-dressed man, an international sort of dapper Dan. Say, when it comes to designing clothes, I got it all over Chaparral. Why, I'm a regular fashion blue.
That's the way it was, and whenever, you know, someone related to Jim Otto, they would know that, oh, that's the guy with the black mohair suit and that comes out with the big smile on his face, and his nose is crooked.
So, it's a beautiful nose.
I know. So I'd come out and I'd give Sally a kiss after a game, and she'd get out her little compact and she'd say, "Look at your nose. Can't you do something about that?" And I'd look at Sally. I said, "Honey, why don't you straighten it out the way you want it?" So I'd sit there right in the parking lot at the Oakland Coliseum or wherever I was, and she'd straighten my nose out, and I would smile. And I say, "Okay, let's go get a beer.
Let's get to it.
And let's go have a good dinner and enjoy our children." That's what we would do.
Oh man, you lived the most beautiful American story, and you're still doing things for us. I was seeing about the prosthetic leg that you wear. There's some kind of computer chip or microchip in it, and it's like an early version of this technology that Jim has stepped up and he's working on, so our vets and people in the future are going to benefit from this. Could you tell us a little about that?
Well, it just so happened I had so many knee surgeries that physically we all get older. Goodness sakes, some things have to give you a problem. Well, anyway,
right.
On my right leg, I had I think it was probably my 7th artificial prosthetic knee that I had put in, and it just so happened that prosthetic knee got infected. Well, that's when a prosthesis becomes infected in your body, it can really raise havoc with parts of your body.
That could kill you, folks. That could kill you.
Right. It can kill you. And anyway, I got a bad infection and I almost died. But the doctors were able to save me, but in saving me, they had to amputate my right leg.
He said, "They ain't taking me yet."
Yeah, they amputated my right leg just above the knee. So I have a leg, it's called a C leg. The C is for computerized. They made this computerized leg for me, and it's got a battery in it and everything, and computer chips. What they do is they program these chips for various different stride lengths and different ways of moving your leg. How, say for instance, you're walking along and you feel like you're going to stumble, it'll compensate for you, and it'll help you pick yourself up so you're not falling, so you're not gonna fall or trip.
That's incredible.
I know, and it's a fantastic thing. I've been walking with one of those legs now for just about 8 years, I think.
Wow.
And I've had several of those legs made for me because, the quadriceps on your leg that has been amputated, they kind of deteriorate. Deplete, and it gets smaller, so you have to make a smaller upper part of your leg. They rebuild that so it fits your leg better and more snug.
Then you get the band around that, right?
Yeah.
You put it on.
So I've got an artificial leg that the upper part, it's all Oakland Raiders. There's a huge Raider crest on it.
It's beautiful.
It is. It's crazy.
It's the most beautiful prosthetic leg I've ever seen in my entire life.
Anyway, these people, they'll see it, you know, and I mean, I'm kind of, you know, the Raiders have always kind of been, you know, loose, let's call it. I've been known to just happen to be someplace and, oh, my right leg, oh, my pants fell down.
Oh, no. Yeah, I hope we got some Oakland Raider boxer shorts on too.
Yeah, well, certainly, you bet. But there's my leg, my Oakland Raider boxer shorts on, and you know, who would think I would be standing like that with anything but my boxer shorts, looking like a pair of swimming trunks? So I was not exposing myself in any way, but I was showing. Yes, I was, I guess. But
we got a broke Raiders fan, folks.
I know, there was my leg with this big Raider crest on it, commitment to excellence on it, and I'm proud of it. I can take that to my grave, and my family knows we're all proud of the fact that what we did. I mean, my children, I had 2 children, Jennifer and Jimmy, and what we did to, as a family, to be the best Raider representations as we could be.
And I think that you knocked it out of the park and then some. Mr. Rader. Folks, you're tuned into the Raider Life podcast. I have got the legendary 00 Jim Otto on the line. So here's what I want to ask you. The huddle breaks, right? You were in there with all these field generals we talked about. Huddle breaks. Your turn. You're walking towards that football. What's going through your head?
Immediately, as I spin out of the huddle, knowing what play we've got that we're going to call, that we called in the huddle, there could be an audible. We might change the play. Immediately, I'm looking at the defense, and I'm looking at the position of the defensive line and linebackers. And that's sometimes I'm also looking at the secondary, and that's what a responsibility for a center with the Oakland Raiders was on in those days. Was I called the line blocking for pass protection and also our run blocking, and that was one of my responsibilities. So that's the first thing I'd look at. I'd look at the placement of the defensive line and the placement of the linebackers, and in some cases the secondary as well, because I had a call blocking for if it was a pass or if it was an outside run or an inside run, say the inside trap or a sweep, and also for like when LaMonica was going to throw a bomb, I had to call a certain type of blocking to block the defense that was set up, and LaMonica needed that time to throw a bomb, so we really had to work our fannies off to block for him. So that's what I did, and I did that for all the years that I played, and that was something that Coach Davis brought to our team, and that was something that I worked so diligently on to perfect in my years. You know, Sally will even say there were times that I would get up in the middle of the night and she would hear me. She would hear me calling signals out, and I'd wake up from my sleep, and I would jump out of bed, and I'd go into the living room, pick up my playbook. I have my playbook right here where I am right now. So many years ago, I still have my playbook next to me, and I can open that playbook and see exactly what the play was, and I knew what the play was. I would be calling signals in my sleep. And she would wake up, and I would be calling these signals, and I would come out of my sleep, and I'd say, "Oh, I'm sorry, honey," and I'd come back to bed and get into bed. But I would get up and go in the living room, open my book, and check and make sure I was making the signal call properly.
Oh man, 1 sheep, 2 sheep, hit hole 4, baby.
I know. I mean,
so what was your favorite play to run? What was your favorite play when they called you? You said, "Let's light them up, boys."
I like the inside plays. I like the right up front. I wanted Ray Nitschke to be over my nose. I wanted guys like Kostelnik and Joe Greene and guys like that, because it was the biggest challenge I had to face, and I wanted to really show them that I could play. I could compete with them. They had to compete with me to win, and I loved it.
How early in the game did you know, probably like a play in, how early in the game did you know, I'm going to own this guy all day, or I got my work cut out for me today?
I was never overconfident in that manner. It just, to me, I just was always taught never to be overconfident and never do anything or think that you could do anything you wanted, because it's, you can be confident, but don't be overconfident. And
that's a jewel.
Don't do anything that you're going to be sorry for later. Naturally, I didn't make every block for 15 years in a row. I missed some blocks, definitely, but I tried my best at all times to be perfect, and that's what brought me here today, is that fact that I did just that. And I just thank everybody who ever was a part of my life who helped me become that type of person.
What's the best advice through this long journey you've been on? What's the best piece of advice you've ever been handed?
Well, I don't know. I've just always worked myself on being the best, and the results I got from it, I could always advise others to do. I advised my son. My son was a good football player. He played at Utah State. He had 18 scholarships when he got out of high school.
Wow.
And he was a linebacker. I'm very proud of him. There are other players that have come to me, even some NFL players that have come to me because of things that I've showed them how to do. Like I played in 12 Pro Bowl games. I don't know if anybody else has ever played in that many, but I
308 consecutive games, folks.
Yeah, that's a bunch. But anyway, there's a couple times they would bring a second center in there. I don't know, maybe because he got a lot of votes, which was fine.
Right.
Anyway, he would be a young guy, and he'd come to me and ask me about certain blocks and certain things, and I would tell him there's no way I'm going to keep a secret from anybody. That's ridiculous. Right. But I'd show them how I did it and what I did and everything, and they would really appreciate it, and you know, and I appreciate those guys. To this very day, there are some guys out there that played center and or linebacker that I could give them some tips as to how to handle a center, how to place your feet and everything, and driving your legs, and to get the hole open, to get that back through there and pick up the first down, pick up the fourth down, whatever it might be.
Get those yards.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do, and that is rewarding in itself, just to be able to help somebody to become a better football player.
You know, Jim, we always say on the Raider Life podcast that the weakest thing you could do is hoard knowledge. It means that you're not confident in yourself and you can't get the job done, and that's what you just told us right there.
Well, that's very important, and I've always shared with a lot of guys. I mean, there are some guys out there that I wasn't very proud of that played the same position to me, but you know, I tried to be like one time. There's this kid who played for the Steelers, Mike Webster, great center. Great young center, you know, and he was from a town not too far from my hometown in Wisconsin. And his rookie year, we were playing Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, and I come out on the field and, you know, pregame, and we're warming up. I'm with Upshaw and Hawkins and Beeler and Art Shell and those guys. We're warming up, doing our calisthenics and everything, and there's this guy, somebody is hollering, "Hey, Mr. Otto! Hey, Mr. Otto!" and everything, and I didn't say anything. I just kept doing my workout, you know, because I was starting to get really intense about my workout, getting warmed up. And Upshaw and Shell, they're laughing, and they say, and then Upshaw and Shell say, "Hey, Mr. Otto, somebody wants to talk to you, Mr. Otto, Mr. Otto." I look up, and it's Mike Webster. He's jumping up and down, waving his hands at me. "Remember me? I'm Mike Webster. I'm from Rhinelander, Wisconsin. Remember when you told me this stuff and this stuff? I'm here. I made it. I made it in pro football." And, you know, it was a thrill for me. There's Mike Webster, and he's hollering at me across the field, although that was the game of the Immaculate Reception. Anyway,
what's the call, Otto?
Well, I would say it was incomplete.
They would agree, folks. Case closed.
Two guys on the same team touched the ball. It was incomplete, and they went on to win that big game, and that was the beginning of, you know, Pittsburgh's dynasty and their run for the gold. So anyway, but that was Mike Webster, and I tried to help a lot of guys, throughout my career that I knew. If they asked me questions, I didn't go up and push myself on them. I would be available. If they asked me a question, I would give it to them. I'd give them the answer. Sometimes they'd even write me a letter. Like I get fan mail all the time, and in this particular case, maybe someone would write a letter to me, and I would write back. I said, well, it's the way you place your feet. You have to feet are so important for an offensive lineman, and how you make your block. You got to have your feet first. You have to have a good solid base. And
got to be a good dancer.
That's it, baby.
Now, we've seen you through the years, Mr. Otto, Mr. Davis, in the skybox, looking down, watching the games go on. What were you guys talking about these new guys, about this new game? What kind of conversations would you share?
Well, I would always, naturally, I would not tell Mr. Davis what I thought until he asked me what I thought. I was not I was there voluntarily helping if I could.
Right.
And if he asked me something that I might have seen, I would tell him what I thought of the play and how it worked and why it didn't work. And he would either agree with me or he would say, with a few superlatives, that I was wrong. And but in most cases, there would be silence. And when there was silence, I knew that he knew that what I was talking about and what was the problem. And that's what we would talk about in the owner's box, and we did that for years. And I surely do miss Coach Davis right now. I miss him so much because I always had an opportunity to talk with him. We would converse over the phone. Even after I basically retired away from the game, away from the office and everything, we would still be conversing on the phone regularly. This is my life, Boots. Where'd you get a name like Boots?
My mother.
Your mother? Way to go, Mom. Way to go, Mom. Charlie Boots. That's a big league name.
Yeah, it's short Charlie Boots. It was always my name, and it's just always worked for me.
Well, that's wonderful. You got to have pride in that, And
it's the thing about Raider Nation. We always, first of all, have the best names, and second of all, when you say your name and people say, "What's that?" Kind of like A Boy Named Sue by Johnny Cash, right? It builds character.
That's it, man. You got it. You did. There was a guy named Sue. Yeah.
What were you listening to game day to get you in the zone for the games?
Well, we had all kinds of music in the locker room on Sunday morning, and there would be some country western going on the phone, and on the loudspeaker in the locker, and then some of the
Johnny Whalen.
Yeah, Waylon and Willie and all that type of stuff. And then there were some of the African American kids that would want some we didn't have rap in those days. There wasn't
like
rap.
Hendrix?
Yeah, there was some good soul music, and
the music was beautiful.
It was. We really enjoyed that, and when we had parties or we would go out or something like that, that type of music was always represented in our group of people that would be out to dinner together. Sometimes it would be 12, 13 of us guys and our wives sitting at a huge table.
All night on the town.
Yeah, and it would be usually after a game we would do this, and we'd always had babysitters to take care of our children, and then after we got through with dinner, in most cases, we would all go home, be together as a family in our own families. So the group that we had with the Oakland Raiders were just always just a great group of guys who really wanted to win together.
We asked favorite music. What's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie?
Favorite movie all time, Jim Otto.
There was a lot of great movies, and being a country boy like I am, what can I tell you? I mean, John Wayne and guys like that, and there was every once in a while I try to imitate his voice in song, and naturally I get teased by everybody in the family, and so I've never gone public with it. So please don't take it. I might.
I'll tell you what. You're going down. You're going down with. You're going down in history with the Duke, riding right next to him.
All right, Dave. Believe me when I say life has been great. Life has been just very good to me, and I've been very blessed. And we've also had some tragedy in our family, but we still have our love and respect for everybody.
If you have lived through some of the worst tragedies, some of the worst battles, if there was a Raider Nation member right now going through a terrible tragedy, what's some advice you'd give them to tell them keep your chin up, push through?
I think the best I could say to anybody, I would first of all, and what I do is, if it were you, Boots, I've never met you, but you're some form of a celebrity. Say for instance, I wouldn't even know who you were, but someone told me about you and that you had a problem. The first thing I'd do is I would probably give you some form of caress, okay?
All right.
Probably just hold you and then I would say a few words and try to see how you responded and then I would go on from there a little bit. But I would not be pushing anything on you to hurt you or to think I was helping you and I wasn't helping you. It's very difficult. Everybody needs a certain type of love and understanding in duress, in tragedy, and you have to be ready to help that person in whatever needs that person might have. And that's what I try to do. I try to be that type of person that can help somebody, and that's what I want to do. I think that kind of answers it.
Absolutely. I think that answers it and then some. Be there. And you know what I'm picking up about you, Mr. Otto, is that you sit back. You're a very smart man. You analyze things. And that's something I'm noticing with Raiders. We had Tim Brown on. Very cerebral man. Likes to sit back and see things. Doesn't jump his gun and then regret things later.
Well, that's something you can't do. The greatness of a Tim Brown, the greatness of some of these other guys, a Stabler, the greatness of a Bob Brown, offensive tackle, or an Upshaw or Shell. And when you hear these people speak about their game, speak about their life, their family, you want to hear from them the anxiety, the toughness, the passion that they may have. And that's what you want to hear. And you hear that, and it's very gratifying.
And that's all you can ask for in the end of the day is all the love. And that's all we got for you. Nothing but love for you. And nothing but love for the gems you're sharing with us. And I want to take a second out. I want to thank our buddy Tony Guzman of the San Leonardo Ford store. He hooked this conversation up and made it possible to bring Jim Otto to Raider Nation. So big thanks to the San Leonardo Ford store and our buddy Gooz.
Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure being with you guys, and we'd like to wish you all the best in the world. God bless you all, and we'll talk to you again someday.
Absolutely. God bless you, Jim. Thank you for everything you've done for us here in Raider Nation. And we look forward to talking to you soon. Part 2 might need to be a sit-down with Sally Otto.
Very good. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Well, that'll do it for this week's episode. Thanks for joining us again here on the Raider Life Podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Boots, and for more episodes, head on over to RaiderLife.com. Don't forget, follow us on Twitter at RaiderLifePOD and on Facebook by searching Charlie Boots. God bless you and your families, and I'll see you next time here on the Raider Life.